Hello, everyone. Steve Gibbs, Sage X3 Solution Engineer. Thanks for having me today. In this part of the demonstration, I'm going to take you through the X3 financials, including general ledger, AP and AR, fixed assets, and a number of areas in between like cost accounting, bank reconciliation, and others. So let's get started. You'll notice I'm logged in right now into Sage X3 under a role called Financial Manager, and we're going to use that for this part of the demonstration. You may have already seen some of the other role-based landing pages, like someone in a manufacturing role, maybe someone in a distribution role, what they would see when they log into X3. X3 is a role-based application, so what you see is based on your role in the organization, and right now we're going to focus on somebody in a finance accounting role using this Financial Manager landing page. So one of the key things that you can include on your landing pages when you log in are dashboards. So as an example, I've got an enterprise dashboard. I kind of want to walk you through how you can navigate a couple reports and dashboards before I take you through to show you how you can configure your organization in X3, set up your companies, any sites, locations, warehouses that you may have, even your chart of accounts. I kind of like to start with an end in mind view. So let's look at this dashboard a little further. I'm going to make it a little larger here. First thing I'd like to draw your attention to is across the top of any of the dashboards, you have different selection options that we call slicers. So here, once you've configured your organization, you can roll it up your hierarchies any way that you'd like. And this concept allows you to roll up, customers, maybe into different channels as we see here, or your products into different product categories, or even your chart of accounts up different ways. So as far as the organization goes, you can see I've got different companies here, NA10, NA20, process and discrete with different sites below those. I've got this part of the organization rolling up to the US and then to North America. So I've set this hierarchy up to roll my business up geographically. Now your business may roll up another way. The key point is you can set up the hierarchies any way that you'd like. It's not a one size fits all. If you roll your business up 2 or 3 different ways, you'll define 2 or 3 different hierarchies to support those different types of reporting and visibility into the business. As I make selections here, maybe we'll look at NA20 instead, take that company off. You'll notice the underlying data is updated accordingly. So I can just select the areas of the business that I want to see, and the underlying KPIs, charts, reports, and other metrics are updated accordingly. So any of the dashboards can include KPIs. As an example, I've got a liquidity KPI here, kind of a common financial KPI that many businesses want to see. Delivery performance, am I getting product to my customers on time and in full? And you can pick and choose what's important to you in your role within the business. Top 10 most profitable customers, gross margin information, and some other charts as well on this dashboard. All the dashboards and reports are drillable. So if I want to look at sales to this customer, international distributors, margin of 52.51%, and drill down further, I can do that. I can see different products that I've sold this customer, and I can expand any of these nodes. Maybe we'll look at these IT products, expand that down, look at specific SKUs, and make our way down to a specific transaction. And then we can drill, in this case here, this will be a sales transaction, a sales invoice, a financial sales invoice. We can take a look at that and see who the sales rep was. We can see what did we sell them, what products did we sell them, all through this inquiry. So the point is you can drill down to varying levels of detail from any of these dashboards. Take a look at another dashboard. Maybe somebody in an AR role would want to see this type of information. Includes number of open outstanding AR items. It's got aging information here, including both overdue receivables and current receivables. Key metrics such as DSO or day sales outstanding are included on this dashboard. And the same slicers that we saw before that allow you to look at the business in many different ways. We haven't looked at customer channel yet. So this particular demo image has customers rolled up into these different categories, so I can take a look at AR by these categories if I wanted to. Let's take a look at a financial report. So now, last set of reports I'm going to walk you through are these for now, and then we're going to go in and look at, well, how do we set the organization up in X3? But I think it's always good to kind of start with, what does it look like on a report? How do you want to get the information out of the business? And then once we know that, then we can figure out how to set up the X3 accordingly. So here we've got the same slicers across on these financial reports. This is just a standard income statement. I can expand the different parts of the organization like US and see the different companies. So I'm seeing P&Ls for the different companies. I see gross margins here, and I see net margins. Maybe I'm allocating some cost out to these different companies. And in that case, I would have a different net margin than I do gross margins for that area of the business. Chart of accounts can be rolled up as well. We'll see that in a minute. We do that to what we call a pyramid. It's really just another type of a hierarchy. So to look at different GL accounts rolling up to cost of goods sold, I can expand this node, expand cost of goods sold, and I see there's different GL accounts that roll up to cost of goods sold. And that's all set up within X3, and then that drives this financial report that we're looking at. So look at another flavor of a financial report. We'll scroll down a little. Income statement by product category. So here what we're seeing is we're seeing P&Ls by different product categories or product lines that this business sells. Same thing, we got gross margins, net margins. And this is being facilitated through a concept in X3 that we call dimensions. So think of dimensions as chart of account segments on steroids. More to come on that in a second. But once you set up these different dimensions, whether they be for cost centers or product lines like we're seeing here, or projects, or other things that may require this type of reporting, you'll be able to produce financial reports like we're seeing here. Lastly, X3 supports budget versus actual reporting. So we've got same type of P&L, got our COGS and our sales over here, but instead of seeing different, maybe product lines, we're seeing actual sales and a budgeted amount with variances. The conditional formatting, if revenues go up, it's green. If expenses go up, that's bad and it's red. So it handles all that. Different comments in here. You can annotate to add comments. You can even annotate at the cell level. So you can see that I'm over budget here on insurance because there's a new policy increase. And then I could drill into this number if needed as well. Unlimited budgets and versions. So as an example, I've set up some different budgets over here, different versions. And here's one. I've got kind of a current and initial version. I can pick whatever budget or version of a budget or even a forecast that I want to see on this report by making selections through this drop down. The key thing is that we'll support an unlimited number of budgets and forecasts and versions. Once those are set up and you populate the different budget data that you need, you'll be able to produce a report like we're seeing here. Now let's just go ahead and move on now to this accounting organization tab. This is a process map, as you've likely seen in other parts of the demonstration today. One of the primary ways to navigate Sage X3 is through process maps, which help you manage end-to-end business processes. This one is used to set up your accounting organization. So those companies that I saw on the dashboards and the financial reports that we just looked at would be set up here using these options on the landing page. Once we set up the entire organization, when you're in X3 transacting, entering in invoices, journal entries, looking at sales orders, you'll have access to any and all companies within the organization within one login. There's no requirement to log out of one company and log into another. You can view all companies that you have access to or all sites with one login. So as an example, I've opened up this tab here, sales invoices. I'm on the sales invoice screen. If I click the plus button to add a new sales invoice, and I go to the sales site and I do a lookup, you'll notice I have access to multiple companies. I've got my discrete company, my process company. Looks like I've got South African, ZA, got those companies. I've got Angola and some other companies. But the point here is that everything's accessible through a single login, and it can be secured as well. So maybe some individuals only have access to a single company or a subset of the companies. That's within the security capabilities of Sage X3. So back to this landing page. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first piece of data. One of the first things you'll need to set up would be a company. I'm going to go ahead and click this option here. Let's take a look at a company in Sage X3. Got standard name. Legislation, remember earlier, actually I don't think I mentioned this, so let me go ahead and cover off on this. We like to refer to Sage X3 as a multi-everything or a multi application. So what do we mean by that? It's going to support multiple companies like we've seen, multiple sites, multiple languages, multiple legislations like we're looking at right here, multiple ledgers. Maybe you need to set up, different ledgers for IFRS and GAAP, multiple currency, and multiple chart of accounts. The great thing is that if you don't need, you may not need all those capabilities today, and maybe you just need a subset of those. But with X3, we can help future-proof your business. You're not going to have to worry that 6 months after you go live, and all of a sudden you need to, start, you acquire a business in another country, and you need to address some of those regulations or payment methodologies in those other companies. You don't have to worry that you're going to be stuck and have to move to a new ERP, because X3 can help future-proof your business by allowing you to turn on those capabilities in the future. So legislation is where you would set up a legislation for the company, which is going to drive things like I just mentioned, how payments are processed. Every country has their own rules for, receiving and making payments. It can drive things like depreciation rules, how fixed assets depreciate. Those are some good examples of things that are driven through this legislation setting. So we scroll down, you can set a logo up. This will, you can configure your things like sales orders and invoices to include the logo. Different companies can have different logos. That's quite common. And this is just a place where you can store that logo. Got access to what we call an account core model. This is where you're going to go in and reference, which chart of accounts is being used for the company. I want to jump to this screen quickly because I want to point out the ability to track multiple ledgers here. Now, multiple ledgers really, I think there's a couple primary use cases. One would be maybe you need to track your financials in multiple accounting standards. In that case, you may have an IAS or an IFRS type ledger as well as a legal ledger, so you can do reporting under both standards. That's common for maybe a company that has operations in Europe where they need to do IFRS reporting, but maybe they consolidate everything up in GAAP. You would use multiple ledgers for that. Another common scenario would be, businesses that have different accounting currencies in different countries. So as an example, I've got a configuration here for a company in France. Let's go ahead and pick one of those. And you'll notice that this company has different ledgers. They've got their legal ledger, which is maintained in the euro. So their standard financials for this company, I believe it's a company in France. It is. You can see the legislation is French. Keeps their standard financial statements in the euro. That's their accounting currency. However, since it's a U.S.-based corporation that just happens to have operations outside of the U.S., they also have a ledger set up that tracks everything in the U.S. dollar. And that's this ledger here, number 5, U.S. consolidated ledger. And what we'll do is we'll maintain another ledger in the U.S. dollar. And this will be a translated set of financial statements. So there's a process that you can run to translate, in this case, your European financials to the U.S. dollar to support consolidated financial statements in the U.S. dollar. So then again, this may not be a need today. If it is, great, it's supported. But if it's not today, it could be in the future. And this can help kind of future-proof your investment in the new ERP system that you're evaluating today. Let's go back to the main setup screen. There we're on. Going to cancel. Looks like it thought I was making a change, which I wasn't. So you can set up sites here as well. You can set up different hierarchies. So once you set your chart of accounts up, you'll be able to define that hierarchy that we saw on the financial report a minute ago. And the way you'll do that is through this option here. So if we hit pyramids, let's find that pyramid that we were working with, which I think is this one here. We'll look at the graph, and now we can see, that financial report. I believe we had a COGS on here. So here's COGS and the different GL accounts that we saw, on that line, the financial statement are defined here. So you can go into this COGS. There's a way to, click that option, go into a setup screen, and then define using wildcards or even specifically defining specific GL accounts, which accounts roll up into this line on the GL statement. We can move things around to these different nodes of the tree. Maybe OPEX needs to wind up in another area. We can move different nodes of the tree around, save that off, and then have our financial statements updated to reflect those changes that we made. So this is just one example of a hierarchy. We've seen a lot of hierarchies, kind of the end result to the question of how would we set one up. This is an example of that, and this is related around how will I roll up my chart of accounts for reporting purposes. Let's go back to our main page. And let's talk a little about chart of account segments, or what we call dimensions. So I'm going to take you to this traditional accounting page here and just show you, many accounting systems use a long, what is often called a fully qualified account number that includes things like your national account, cash and income. That is concatenated with other things like, maybe a product category or a cost center to create this big long string. This has a couple challenges. Is that, let's say you're doing a transaction that has nothing to do with the sales region. Maybe you're just doing an expense for a cost center. You have to do what we call the zero parade. So you're having to fill in these segments of the chart of accounts even when they don't apply on certain transactions. In X3, through dimensional accounting, you're able to tag your transactions, and you only tag them when required or relevant. So you avoid that whole zero parade. The other thing with the dimensional or analytical accounting that we support is you can add new segments to your chart without having to go through that dreaded chart of accounts restructure. So that's what I find is another great benefit. I've been through those in the past. As if you roll back to my days when I was in practice as an accountant, I've been through chart of accounts restructures. They're not fun. And with dimensional accounting, we can avoid that, because if we need to view the business differently, we can just add a new dimension. So that's the traditional structure. Those are some of the challenges. The zero parade, chart of accounts restructures. How do we address that in X3? With analytical or dimensional accounting, one and the same. So how would we set up, different dimensions, and what types of dimensions may I add? Let's go into this screen here. Different types of dimensions that you may want to set up. Cost centers, very, very common. Some people call them departments, typically one and the same. Divisions, markets, projects, products. Now, if the data, if maybe all your reporting related to products could be achieved by analyzing sales data, you don't need to set up a segment in your chart of accounts for that, unless you want to do allocations to try to look at maybe net margins across your products. So keep that in mind as kind of a best practice as to whether or not I need to add a dimension. Is if I can get the data somewhere else, like maybe analyzing sales data, you may not need that dimension in your chart of accounts. So let's go ahead and pick cost center here. Just some examples of different cost centers, accounting department, IT department. We can go ahead and pick this. Any of the different dimensions have different settings. Here I've got the ability to define which company or companies or different sites or groups of sites have access to this IT department. Maybe the IT department is out of our headquarters office. Therefore, it is only relevant to one company. I could pick it from the lookup or just type in the company name that it applies to. And I'm, at this point, unable to enter in a transaction to the IT department or any other company in the system. You can put validity dates around the different dimensions. So maybe it's a project, and the project ends on 6/30, and I want to make sure that nobody enters a transaction for this project beyond the end of the project completion. That's where you would put that date. Access codes. Who has access to the IT department financials, and who can enter transactions for this department? So you can use it to secure the financial data. You can use it to secure who can process transactions to this particular segment, all through this access code setting. You'll define different kind of groups of individuals with their respective permissions through this option, and then X3 will basically respect those security settings as users navigate the system, so that somebody's not looking at transactions for a department that's not their own, that they shouldn't be looking at. So, and these same type settings, by the way, exist on the GL account. We're looking at a particular call center, the IT department, the exact same settings, the exact same level of security. You want to secure maybe a payroll account, you've got the same access code setting at the GL account level. So I think those are the key things that I wanted to discuss regarding getting your organization set up, a little about hierarchies, a little about the chart of accounts and how we manage what we call dimensions. So I'm going to go ahead and move on now to general ledger. So let's move on to this GL tab and look at some of the general ledger processes within X3. So this is just a standard general ledger process map that we often use to help navigate GL within X3. Now, you may be looking at this and you say, well, I want to see this type of information on the landing page. Maybe I want a listing of all outstanding journal entries that have yet to be approved. The great thing is that you can personalize these landing pages by simply clicking the plus button and then adding new content. Maybe adding a new query around transactions awaiting approval. Maybe add a new process map to help we navigate GL a little differently, calendar views, charts, and others. So I'm not going to do that for the demo right now, but just wanted to kind of make that point. You may have seen it in other parts of the demo today. The landing pages here from a finance accounting standpoint are fully configurable as well. Got some quick navigation options that I use: journal entries, inquiring on accounts and their balances, access to the month-end and year-end closing process, any journal entries that are in a temporary state that I haven't finalized. And maybe I'll finalize these in batches or maybe all at once at the end of a month, but I want visibility into that. And then a overall process map here that helps me manage everything from maintaining the chart of accounts, setting up budgets, and other things within the system. Recurring entries, so I can do recurring entries here. The revaluations, we looked at the France company, and I mentioned X3 could do translations. So this is the process within X3 where you go in and do the translations for that U.S. consolidated ledger. So you can take in my example earlier, the company in France, take their financials in euros and translate those to the U.S. dollar. Imports, we'll look at that here in this part of the demo. I think those are some of the key things from a financial standpoint that I wanted to discuss. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to go into the journal entry screen. I'm going to pick this transaction. And let's take a look at an actual journal entry. So this is a journal entry in GL. And you can see over here I've got this invoice button is enabled, which means that this journal entry originated from an invoice. So any journal entries that come from one of the subsystems, or maybe from a payment, AP, AR, are connected, back to those source transactions. So as an example, I'm looking at this GL and I got more details on. So it looks like it's a purchasing transaction. I've got some questions on the source transaction, the actual invoice. I can drill back to that by clicking this button here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that purchase invoice. So here's the purchase invoice. I can go down to lines. I can see it looks like it was a fixed asset that I purchased. I can further go into an option that we call journal traceability, which allows me to even look at other related transactions. So we started with the GL. We found the invoice that created the journal entry. And now I've got access to, for that invoice, it looks like it was a purchase of a fixed asset that has flowed all the way into fixed asset. So if I want to, I could click this option here and go in and even look at the fixed asset record in our fixed asset system. And it goes the other direction too. So I've got an invoice here. If I want to go up and look at, the receipt. When did I get that new piece of equipment in? When did I get the Bobcat in? When did I get the laptop in? Whatever I happen to purchase here, I can go in and look at the receipt transaction. Or even back to who in the heck requested this and who approved it. I can go back and look at the purchase request. So I could go back to the very beginning. Who requested this fixed asset? All the signature history is available here. Who signed off on this before you ever even issued a PO, before you ever got the invoice and paid it. All accessible from the journal entry. Let's go back to where we started. Back to the journal entry here. Look at another journal entry. This is just a general adjusting journal entry. And select that. Now, by the way, I didn't show you this, but so let me just go ahead and mention this. When I went back to that invoice record, if there's any notes or attachments, I drill back to an invoice. We can actually do that and just go ahead and show you that again. I think it's important. So let's go back, go to the invoice. My point is if there's any associated attachments or notes, the little purple icon will light up here. So if I want to see a scanned copy of the invoice for this invoice for the fixed asset purchase, I can access it here through this button. So just wanted to kind of circle back and cover that. So now let's just look at that journal entry I had up a second ago. So this is just a general journal entry. Maybe I'm making a month-end adjustment. Down here, I'll pick my GL account numbers. The key thing I wanted to draw your attention to is we've got the ability to allocate, in this case here, it's a $1,000 expense to this GL account, which is an insurance account. I've got the ability to allocate this insurance expense across different segments of my chart of accounts or different dimensions. So what I'm doing here is this $1,000 expense is being allocated out to different cost centers like IT, accounting, the purchasing department, marketing, etc. And we do this based on an allocation rule. So you can actually set up defaults for suppliers. You can just enter in those allocation rules, which I've done here. This distribution field here, utility, this is the field that is driving that distribution. So you set the rules up. It can be based on square feet, based on head count. You can even do more advanced allocations involving GL balances. You'll define the rule. You'll attach it here, in this case, to this line of the transaction. And then X3 will allocate, in this case, the $1,000 expense across those different segments of your chart of accounts. Any transaction in the system can be copied, so we need to do the same type of adjusting entry. Looks like this was done December of last year. We need to do one this month. We can just copy it. You delete the number. Go ahead and give it a current date. We'll say this is today. We'll do it in February. Maybe give it a new description, change the amounts if I need to, and you can just hit create to make a copy of that journal entry if needed. We support recurring entries as well. There's a lot of this. So you can set journal entries up in advance. Maybe you're doing an accrual at the end of the month. This reversal field here can be used to set up and create a reversal entry in the next period. So you can come out and maybe this reverses as of the first day of the next period. You can also reverse. There's an option over here on the right-hand side of the screen, reversal. If you make a mistake and you need to just completely reverse the journal entry, you can do this here at a GL level. Now, typically, especially if the journal entry originated from something like an AP or AR, we would go back and correct the source transaction, and there's some great options there to cancel the transaction, correct it, and repost it that we'll see when we get to AP and AR. So that's journal entries. Don't expect you're doing a lot of manual journal entries. You expect most of these are automated. If a transaction comes in an electronic format, like maybe your payroll entries, those can be imported. We've got an import option here. It's defaulting to import journal entries, but you can import, X3 supports imports across the board for any type of data. So if we clear this out of here, we could import customers. We could import invoices here. We could import appointments in CRM, cash forecasts, budgets. So I think budgets is a great example from a financial standpoint. Many businesses budget in a spreadsheet. They're not using a advanced corporate performance management or budgeting and planning solution, and they just budget in a spreadsheet. That type of data can be imported into X3. So let's look at that journal entry. I'm going to go ahead and import a journal entry for us. This journal entry that we're going to import originated from this spreadsheet here. So let's go in. We're going to change this. We'll change this to enablement demo, okay? We'll save this. This is just a template I've defined. The template can look different. I'd expect the one you're getting from your payroll provider would look different. Just as an example, we're going to use this as a template. We'll save that off, and let's go ahead and import that. And 24111, that is us right here. Go ahead and select that and import it in. So this is created. I've got a journal entry here. We can go ahead and copy that journal entry. Looks like it's 18. Go into journal entries. You can find that transaction here. And here it is, Sage X3 enablement demo. So that's just an example. I mean, I think probably the couple of the most common options I see from a GL standpoint, or even a financial standpoint, would be journal entries, budget data, sometimes invoices, maybe credit card transactions. But the option exists across X3, and you can even schedule these imports as well. I'm not going to take you through that in the demo, but recognize that import process I went through manually. The file comes in, and it's maybe saved to some sort of a shared drive, and you want X3 to import it automatically at 2 a.m. every day. That type of scheduling can be done as well. So just going back, checking my notes, a couple other things that I want to cover. Balance inquiries. So we've got very nice options to inquire on transactions in the system. Let's just look at the transactions for this year. Search on this. And what this includes is all your different GL accounts, beginning balances. We've got debits and credits for the period that I've selected, and then ending balances. So this is these are my ending balances over here on the right-hand most side of the screen. So think of this as an interactive trial balance. A lot of trial balances are just maybe a report, maybe a printed report, but it's tough to do analysis. You see something that looks out of the ordinary, maybe you see expenses look high, and you want to go in and do some analysis on the transactions for the month. Trying to do that on a static report would not be possible. With this particular view here, you can pick any of the accounts and drill down further. So as an example, AR, looks like we've had some debits and credits here for the period. Looks like debits, so setting up some receivables, maybe we issue some new invoices. The credits, maybe customers have paid off their AR balance. And we could drill down further by picking this option here. So let's go down to the next level. Now, what the system has done here is it's taken us down to look at transactions by customer. It recognizes that AR is a control account. So instead of just taking me straight down to actual business transactions, it's taking me down to this next level view that is showing me, in this case, AR transactions by customer. So maybe I want to look at the transactions for international distributors because I'm interested in this $10,000 period credit. So I can now pick this customer and draw down even further to specific transactions. In this case here, I got a couple receipts from the customer, a couple invoices, and I could go further into these transactions here. Like in this case here, look at the actual invoice for the customer. So this is just one example of an inquiry option. It's a account balance inquiry option. We got inquiry options on transactions, inquiry options on invoices. They're across the board in X3. And that's just one example that's relevant to GL. Last thing here, we saw the financial statement, the budget versus actual. Where you'll go to either set up your budgets or enter budgets are through these two options here. To set up a budget, you'll come into this screen here, and then you can go through. I think I had some budgets. We've got the name NA and then for North America, I believe. Actually, no, they don't. I think they start with an N. There they are. So here I've got a 2020 budget for North America. You can define different settings. Am I budgeting at a company level? Am I budgeting at a site level? Am I budgeting for a particular dimension? like cost centers. So this particular budget allows me to budget at the cost center level. So maybe I have different cost center managers that budget for their respective departments. Marketing department budgets all their expenses. IT department budgets their expenses and CapEx. So you'll set up your different budgets here. Maybe you do a sales budget and an OpEx budget, and you kind of roll these up together and pick multiple budgets on a report like we saw earlier. That's possible. And this is the screen where you'll define your budgets, how you budget, and then you'll define those versions down here that we saw earlier. You can have as many versions as you need for any given budget, as well as an unlimited number of budgets. And then this option would be used to enter budget. Now, just a quick comment about budget entry in X3. Typically, if a business is not going to use kind of an advanced budgeting solution, we see most budgeting occurring in a spreadsheet, and then that data would be imported in X3. So I think that's the most common. If someone's not using kind of a purpose-built budgeting and forecasting or budgeting and planning solution, with user-definable, templates and customizable workflow rules, we would see the budgeting being done in a spreadsheet. So I'm not going to go into this entry template right now. I'm going to kind of refer back to the imports that we saw a second ago. So if that's your process, you budget in a spreadsheet, recognize you can import that budget in to be able to produce a budget versus actual report like we saw earlier. Two more topics in this section, and then we're going to pause briefly before we look at AP and AR. So I want to cover off on costing and month-end close. Let's move to costing here. Now, this process map helps you manage everything related to costing. It's got some options up here to manage landed costs. We can handle that from a purchasing standpoint. So all those costs related to freight charges and duty charges and customs charges. You can define rules on how that how those charges impact the cost of your products, and X3 will handle that for you. You can define different costing buckets. You'll notice down here it says standard, revised, simulated, and budgeted cost. So what you can do is you can define different cost buckets. Like maybe you're working on your budget for the next fiscal year, the cost that you plan to use for the next fiscal year. You can basically set up your budgeted costs and then run reports and inquiries. And once that looks good, you can ultimately transfer those costs into your standard cost, which will take effect in that next fiscal year. There's no reason to wait till January 1st to transfer those in as your standards because we won't use them until you get to January 1st. But the point is that there's multiple costing buckets in X3, which is very nice, with respect to things like putting budgets together, or maybe doing simulations of what would my cost look like if I change various things. All the manufacturing setups in the systems, defining your bill of materials, your different rates for your routing operations, for your labor, your machinery, will all be defined through these manufacturing options, which are covered in detail in the manufacturing sections of X3. But the beauty is that once all those costs are defined, typically in conjunction with your cost accounting experts, business will run as normal, work orders will be created, costs will be tracked, and all that will flow automatically into your financials. All those costs will flow into a screen that we call with cost inquiry. So here, we can actually see there's a work order here that has been completed. If I need to go back and look at the work order, I can drill back to that work order. Once I get back to the work order, I can see who's logged time against the work order, how much material was issued to the work order. So all that, we call that production tracking, all the actual production tracking that has been logged against that work order is fully visible from this screen. So you can get to that through this drill down. Ultimately, all the costs come in and are tracked in this section down here. So we can see what the actual material, labor, machinery, overhead costs, total costs were, what was expected, and then any variances. And then depending upon your costing method that you're using, we can either roll this into the cost of your products or just track this as manufacturing variances to variance accounts. So great visibility back into, once all those costs are defined, great visibility back into any variances that you had at a micro level. This is kind of a micro level down to a work order level, as well as high level inquiries showing you variances maybe by work center or variances by work center group. All the data is available for lots of analysis. So if we look at a particular product here, some of the costing on that. So I've got a product here, I've got a bean dip product for a particular site. We can go in, let's go ahead and look at the cost for this product. You'll notice I've got costs for different time periods here for 2019, 2020. If I'd revised the cost and I had kind of another updated costing record, it would show up here. I'm going to create costs for the next fiscal year, say 2021. It would show up here on the left-hand side of the screen. So looking across all levels of the bill of materials for this finished good, I can see total costs broken out by material, machinery, labor, subcontracting overhead, with visibility into the details as well. So if I click this option here, I can see breakouts of different material categories that are going into the cost of this product. In this case here, I can see how much hardware, how much foam, how much upholstery, got a material cost 5. You can name this anything you want to name it, going into the cost of this product here. That's kind of a cost breakdown. And then the two other kind of relevant screen options that I wanted to call out on this screen are transfer. So this is that option to where maybe I go through a calculation process where I roll up my cost for a budget. I'm defining new costs for raw materials. I go through the calculation to roll up all my costs. You can actually calculate all costs across all levels of the bill of material. Go through, basically roll up all your costs. You can roll your costs up for a specific product, all your products, or by making selections. Once the costs are rolled up, they look good, then you'll be able to transfer those in. So maybe I finalize my budgeted cost. I could then transfer that over to my standard cost that's in production, or maybe standard cost that I'll use for the next fiscal year. So this is just kind of a quick introduction to costing, some of the capabilities of X3. There's a lot more to it, but hopefully this answers some of your initial questions that you may have had around costing in Sage X3. Lastly, closing. So we've got a process map for the month-end close process. Allows you to do things like, month-end adjusting journal entries, process recurring journal entries, go in and do multi-currency revaluations and translations. We do have some options to reconcile various accounts using, matching logic and different reports. You can have different inquiries here to maybe, this particular process map that's used quite often has access to see any sales invoices that you haven't posted. Look at financial reports. You'll actually come in, you can close modules out through this option if you need to close out, sales or a particular type of sales transactions before you close out the entire month. You can do that. And then lastly, once everything has been validated, your financial reports look good, and you want to go ahead and lock the period down so that no one can transact, say, in January of 2021, we'll go through a period closing process. Come into this screen here. Looks like I'm open through May. Maybe I'm actually closing out, closing out January. So I got some periods in the future open. Maybe I'm going to close January out. I could come into this closing option to close that. And if you have multiple companies, we do have an option to close multiple periods together. So this option here, actually, multi-company period closing. So you can close if you got 10 different companies. You don't have to go into each company. Just a little bit of a convenience item. It's only typically a once a month thing, but it could save you a few keystrokes. So that's month-end close. So back to kind of where we started, I'm going to pause here before we transition to covering AP and AR and take any questions that you may have.